Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this interview with Cindy Phan. I will be recording this for other students to watch, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Dane Roberts. I'm the Executive Director. We have here with us fourth graders from Monticello Academy Highbury and their teachers. Welcome, Miss Johnson, and Miss Patterson, and all of your students. And of course, we have Cindy Phan with us. I'll give a little introduction. Cindy was featured in the Deseret News this spring because she was the top Sterling Scholar for the state of Utah, which is a great honor. She is from West Valley City. She attended Monticello Academy for at least a little bit of time as an elementary student. She spoke Vietnamese at home as her first language and learned English in school as her second language. She was nominated as a Sterling Scholar in English, and then she won the state's top academic award for all high school students. She's the National Young Arts winner for 2020, a two-time National Gold Medal winner in the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, and that is an amazing set of accomplishments, which led to her being admitted to Harvard University this year as a freshman. And if you don't know, that is quite an honor, a very difficult university to get into, and one of the best, or many would say the best university in the world. So we are so thrilled to have her join us. It's an honor to have her share her time with us. And Cindy, you've done some amazing things, and we're just so grateful that you can share some of what you've learned with us. Is there anything that you would add to that introduction, Cindy?
No, that was super sweet and comprehensive. But just thank you for having me, and thank you to like all the students who are on the Zoom right now.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I have some questions for Cindy. I know there's a lot that we can learn from her. And after I ask my questions, I'm going to open it up to you fourth graders to ask any questions that you would like. So as we're going through, you can type your question in the chat, but I will get to those maybe in 10 minutes or so. First, I'll ask my questions, but you can be thinking of anything that you would like to ask Cindy as we go. So, Cindy, you, as we've seen, have received some great honors, including that Sterling Scholarship Award and admission to Harvard. To what do you attribute your success? How did you get there?
I think a big part is like I was the child of two immigrants. My dad was a refugee from the Vietnam War, so they had not been through the process before. So navigating it was something I did by myself. So like learning that independence meant that I also learned to like seek out opportunities for myself, which I think helped me in the end like find a lot of these new opportunities that a lot of my peers were like equally qualified to get, but maybe didn't know like were out there. And I think a big part is also authenticity or being true to yourself and your interests. I think there's a lot of advice about like applying to college out there that's maybe like, oh, focus on one thing that to be really, really good at, like to make you stand out. I definitely was like pretty spread out in what I liked to do because I was passionate about a lot of things. And so maybe I didn't go super in depth in one thing, but like as you can see, I really loved writing. I also really love science. I did the biology Olympiad, I think my junior year of high school, and I was a semifinalist in that. I also was like published in a research paper. Or I really love debate as well. And like none of these things necessarily go together, like science research with writing, with debate. But if you genuinely love something and are passionate about it, like do not give it up just because someone gave you advice to give it up. I think pursue your passions and it'll show through.
That's fantastic. So, part of what I heard there was that you developed independence and you had a vision for yourself. I'm hearing that some of the challenges and setbacks you had actually seem to help you achieve more success. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the challenges and obstacles that you faced, and so what were they and how did you overcome them?
For sure. Like I said, my parents hadn't been through the process before. So like standardized tests, for example, was something I was like super unfamiliar with and knew about really late going into the game. So like the ACT, for example, is something that I didn't know existed until significantly later than a lot of my peers. Or in terms of like reaching out to like teachers or contacting them, I was always like the one running points on emails or phone calls in general. And even without teachers, like at home as a kid, I would call like doctor's offices and the like to like make appointments. Um, and for sure, as a kid, that was really intimidating. but I think like ultimately it helped me with that sense of independence. And then later, like in high school and especially in college, you have to have really good communication skills with your like professors in writing emails and setting up meetings, and especially because everything's virtual. So I think that really ended up helping me in the end. But as a kid and like even as a teenager, it felt a little intimidating to have to go through that alone. But
Definitely. So you would have to do things that your parents couldn't do for you. You would, I guess, would probably sometimes have to translate for them or do things for them using the English that you'd learned, and that set you up to be independent. That's fantastic. Um, Tell me a little bit about learning English in school. Do you remember? So when you went to school, Vietnamese was the only language you knew. What was it like learning English and not knowing it when you came to school?
my first year of school, preschool, I had a friend who was Vietnamese, and so I think like it was super nice to have a friend. But I think like as a kid, that made me not branch out at all because I didn't think I needed to learn English because I had this friend who like understood me. But then I switched schools for kindergarten, and we weren't in the same school anymore. And it was a little overwhelming, I think, as a kid, to walk into the classroom and the teacher would like say something, and I would have no idea what she was saying, or like try to make friends, and then I would try to talk and they would try to talk, and neither of us could understand each other. um, I think as a kid being exposed to new languages, you pick it up a lot more quickly. Like for example, if I'd gone to like a new country like eighth grade, I think I would have picked up that new language significantly slower than I ended up picking up English. um, but I remember like my parents would tell me that I like did not want to go to school because it was really scary, and a little like disheartening to be in this like new place, like new environment, and not be able to understand anything anyone was trying to communicate with me, and then be unable to communicate with them in turn.
Right. So fast forwarding a little bit to your time at Monticello Academy, do you think anything at this school helped you on your path to success? And if so, what was it?
Monticello was really great. I feel like I would have stayed there like a lot longer. I just like ended up going to like a junior high that fed into my high school, um, Wasatch, which fed into Skyline. But Monticello was such a change of pace from the elementary that I'd gone to. I had gone to this was back when like my parents like finances were like stronger. So I went to like this private school, and then I went to Monticello, and I think the freedom in the environment was so exhilarating and really stimulating. um where I had gone, it was really rigid and there wasn't really a way to do things outside of what had already been set. I don't know if there's still like the AR points system at Monticello,
Yep.
but like for example, that was great, and I know they had like the club set up in my year at Monticello. I think I created two new clubs. I think the 500 point club and the 1,000 point club, um, which was super amazing, like to be able to do. Um, and I think like that's like a big thing about Monticello. Like there are no limits. And especially like to be like in fifth grade, which I think is a really formative year. Being at Monticello really taught me that there's no such thing as like limits that people set on you. Like just because, for example, like at the time the highest club was the 250 point club, didn't mean that I was capped at 250. Um, and that there was always that encouragement to excel. And then I think I also like spelling bee Monticello. I think I represented Monticello my fifth grade year. Um, and a teacher had said that I was like super young and that it wasn't like seen before, or like rarely seen before, and things like that. Like I wasn't like barred from representing Monticello even though I was like a fifth grader. Um, so like even now I'm still so grateful for the environment that Monticello had, that I think like teaches kids that there's no boundaries on their potential, and that so long as they're like willing to achieve and go that extra mile, Monticello is willing to work with them, which I think is like a beautiful mindset to cultivate, especially moving forward.
That's fantastic. And one thing that's also unique in most schools in fifth grade, you'd be in one classroom with one teacher the whole day. But you became more like a junior high student early in fifth grade, which is what these fourth graders here, they're going to be dealing with that fifth grade schedule next year where they're rotating between all the classes. Was that a big change for you, and how did you handle that?
Oh yes, that was something as well. It was so helpful because I went to that junior high the year after, and a lot of kids like had not been familiar with that system of like moving between classes but for your schedule. It was like definitely a change for me because like you usually like stay in one classroom the whole day with one teacher. And so it was, I remember, I think the first day I like ended up on the opposite side of the school from where I was like trying to be. I was going to English, but I ended up on like the wrong side of the school. I couldn't find my classroom. But I think like that's a big part of learning to navigate this. And it's a lot better to like learn it early than like to try to like navigate that later on. And then it was so helpful when I went to Wasatch Junior High for sixth grade. And they had the same schedule. Like you go around to like find your like 7 different classes. And I already had like a whole year of experience of that. And so that was like super helpful.
That's great. And thank you for expanding the Point Club horizons. We still have those amazing Point Clubs, and we have students in this audience who are now hitting those marks that you set. So thank you for inspiring everyone here. Um, is there one memory that sticks out, what you remember most about the school?
Yeah. Well, I have like, I feel like a couple of memories for sure. Um, Let me think about. So I don't think she's at this point. I think she had to retire like the year before that. But Miss Buckholz was like an English teacher at Monticello. Um, and so like for like the spelling bee, she would stay behind with me after school to like read through the words with me because she knew that my parents like couldn't speak English. So if I went home, I wouldn't have anyone to like do that for me. And especially like because like these spelling bee words are like not like basic normal words. They were like super like highbrow like French words. And so I just really remember being so touched that a teacher would go out of her way to help me like this, especially because I think for seventh and eighth grade I represented Wasatch, and there was no teacher at Wasatch who did the same thing for me. Um, and so it was just so sweet to have a teacher who was willing to like, take time out of her day. It was after school. She was not getting paid for it. It was generally just because like out of the goodness of her heart and because she wanted to help me succeed to like the best of my ability. And I think that year I ended up getting like the top 20 of the state, which um, was like super amazing, especially like at the age and almost like entirely. I attribute that to her and her effort to like help me.
That's a wonderful tribute to Miss Buckholz. Yeah, she just retired a couple years ago, and that's fantastic. We have teachers who really care about their students. So thank you for sharing that. So what advice would you give to our current Monticello students?
I think like kind of like going back to what I said at the beginning, like be true to yourself and your passions. There's a lot of advice that tells you like who to be, like what to be or what not to be. And ultimately no one knows your own interests and like better than you do. Um, and I think especially the high school system does a lot to dishearten students or turn them away from their passions or their interests. Um, and I think that if there's something that really brings you joy, stick to that to the best of your ability because again, it will show. And if someone ever gives you advice like colleges won't care about that or it won't look good for colleges, I think the most fulfilling school experience is when you do things that you care about and that you're passionate about. And so like even if you do things that like people tell you are good for college but you don't care about it, you're not going to be happy doing them. And ultimately I think that it's going to be like super fulfilling to have had like 4 years of high school where you like did things you cared about. But especially colleges aren't looking for one kind of student, they want a diverse student body. And so if you think there's something you bring to the table that's not like super ordinary, but that is unique to you, that if anything is a strength that will make you stand out from the crowd. Um, so I think like pursue your passions, be authentic to yourself. Like don't, it sounds so cheesy, but like don't change for other people, especially when they give you advice coming from places that are like, oh, like colleges won't like that because you shouldn't be like doing it just solely for college. You should be doing it for yourself. And I think also just like work hard and have that good work ethic, like keep yourself accountable. If you have goals, like do your best, like work towards those and achieve those goals. Learn that self-sufficiency, like doing things by yourself, keeping yourself on track early on and like build those good skills in advance.
Fantastic. Students, I am going to ask Cindy one more question. While I do, this would be the time for you to type a question that you have into the chat. So Cindy, while students are thinking about and typing a question they might have, uh, this is your first year at Harvard. I guess, are you doing it distance? You're doing it from Utah?
So actually first semester I was on campus, but all classes were virtual. So I was like in my dorm and took classes from my dorm. Um, so freshmen were all on campus fall semester, and because like my Wi-Fi at home isn't great, I don't have like the best learning environment. I petitioned to be back on campus for the spring, so I'll be flying back to Boston on the 20th of this month.
Great. Very good. So do you know what you're going to major in? Do you know what you're going to study? And do you have any dreams for after college?
I'm currently pre-med. So I have dreams of being a doctor after college. Um, but I also have this dream that's not super related to being a doctor. I don't necessarily want to be an author, but I want to publish a book sometime like during the course of my life.
Very good. Okay, I'm going to call on some students here to ask their question. Kara Smith, would you unmute and ask Cindy your question?
Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have one younger sister who also went to Monticello like the year I did.
Fantastic. Um, let's see. Let's go to Iona asked actually the same question I had. What are you going to do after college? Let's go to Josephine. Could you unmute?
Um, was it hard learning English?
I think at the time I remember it being really difficult. Now I don't remember like much of the details, but I think at the time, it was pretty difficult. And I see a couple questions asking like how long it took me. So after a year, I could understand like basic English, but it took me I think at least another half a year, if not year, to understand like more complicated English. And I think I also like picked up reading and writing more quickly than I picked up understanding by listening and speaking. Just because if I could see the words, it was easier for me than trying to puzzle it out without being able to see it.
Great, thank you. Let's see. I have a question from Sarai. Go ahead and unmute.
What inspired you to go to this particular college?
For sure, that's a really good question. So this is just like advice going forward to like not just apply to like one super difficult like college, like have a good spread of like dream colleges and also just like more attainable colleges with those like higher acceptance rates. So I ended up applying to three like reach schools, like those like harder to get schools, and that was Harvard, Stanford, and Yale. And I was lucky enough to get into all three. Ultimately, why I chose Harvard was because it had a lot of the opportunities I was looking for. I really liked the sense of community it had. I also really liked the location in New England, and I think it it has a lot of like really developed and really great programs in a lot of areas, which is what I'm interested in. Like I really love science, I really love English, I really love social sciences. And Harvard is very good at like all of those fields, as opposed to like Stanford, which is like more developed in like computer science and like STEM areas. So I ultimately chose Harvard.
Thank you. Zoe has a couple of questions. Zoe, go ahead and unmute.
The first question is, were you ever bullied?
I think maybe when I was, that is my bad. That's like the phone going on in the background. I think in first or second grade, there was like a little bit of that going on for me, but I don't think I'm really lucky to not have like really extensive experience with being bullied. So for the most part, no, I don't think I was bullied.
And the second question is, do you think I could ever like get the job that I've always wanted?
Can you ask that again for me, Zoe, really quickly? Sorry, you cut out for me.
Oh, do you ever do you ever think I could succeed in my dream of becoming a typist?
Zoe, of course, like 100%. I might not know you super well, but like even being here and like the presence you have here and like the questions you're asking, like you have like such a clever mind. And I think that you can 100% succeed at whatever you want to do and whatever you put your mind to. And if that's being a typist, I feel like you'll be like one of the best typists like ever. 100%, I think like you would succeed and like, you do more than that.
Thank you. Let's go to Addie. Addie, you can unmute.
How long do you think you're gonna stay in college?
So unfortunately, being a doctor takes a while. So I'll do these 4 years at Harvard, then I'll have to apply to 4 years at medical school. So that's 8 years of like college total. Um, and then like afterwards, there's like about 5 or so years of like training I'll have to do before I become like a doctor or like the doctor I want to be. So total, that's about like 13 years with like 8 years in college and then like 5 years training.
Great. That's all the time we have. I know there are other questions people have. Thank you, students, for your participation. We're just grateful that Cindy was able to share this time with us. Cindy, good luck to you the rest of your freshman year and fulfilling all the dreams you've laid out. And again, thank you for being an inspiration to so many of us.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here and like for all the questions you asked in the chat. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all of them. Um, but yes, like thank you so much for being here and for having me.
You guys can give Cindy a wave goodbye. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you later.